By 7:43 p.m. on a Tuesday evening in mid-October, Donald Trump had already interrupted the Fox News town hall moderator 11 times. He had gestured dismissively toward the camera whenever questions veered toward topics he wanted to avoid, and he had spent the first 20 minutes delivering his standard rally speech, despite this being formatted as a question and answer session with voters. The venue was a packed auditorium in Tampa, Florida, with an audience selected by Fox to represent a cross-section of Republican-leaning independents and undecided voters. Trump sat on a bar stool at center stage, his posture that of a man who owned the room and everyone in it. What neither Trump nor his campaign staff knew was that in the third row, 17 seats from the center aisle, sat a woman who had spent the previous 6 weeks preparing for exactly this moment. Her name was not Ivanka Trump, but she shared something with the former president's daughter that would become relevant in ways Trump could not have anticipated. The moderator recognized her during the audience question segment. She stood, holding a small index card with notes written in neat handwriting. She was in her late 30s, wearing a navy blazer over a white blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a professional style that suggested she had come from work. She introduced herself as Rebecca Torres, a small business owner from Sarasota. Trump smiled the way he smiled at all attractive women in audiences, that familiar expression that was part charm, part assessment, part dismissal. He gestured for her to ask her question, already half turned toward the camera, to deliver his answer before she had finished speaking. Mr. President, she began, her voice steady and clear, I want to ask you about something personal that I think matters to voters trying to understand your judgment. In 2016, you appointed your daughter Ivanka as senior advisor to the president, despite her having no government experience, no policy background, and no qualifications for the role beyond being your daughter. Can you explain what merit-based criteria you used to justify giving her that position? The smile on Trump's face flickered. Something in his posture shifted. This was not the question he had expected from the attractive businesswoman in the navy blazer. Well, first of all, he said, his voice taking on that combative edge he deployed when challenged, Ivanka is a very smart woman, very successful businesswoman. Went to Wharton, built businesses, very talented. And she served this country with great distinction. So I reject the premise of your question entirely. Rebecca Torres did not sit down. She remained standing, the index card still in her hand, her expression neutral but attentive. I appreciate that answer, Mr. President, but you didn't address the question. I asked about merit-based qualifications for a senior White House position. You mentioned that she went to Wharton and built businesses. So did hundreds of other people who weren't appointed to senior government roles? What specific qualifications did Ivanka possess that justified a security clearance, an office in the West Wing, and influence over foreign policy and domestic initiatives? Trump's hand came up in his trademark dismissive gesture. She was very involved in workforce development, women's initiatives, very successful programs. She did a great job. Everyone said so. Can you name a specific policy outcome from her workforce development initiatives? Rebecca's voice remained calm, almost conversational. A measurable result that came from her work? The moderator attempted to interject, to move to the next question, but Trump spoke over him. She worked on vocational training programs, she met with world leaders, she was instrumental in many things. Many, many things. You wouldn't understand because you're looking at it from the outside, but she was very effective. Rebecca pulled a document from inside her blazer. It was a single sheet of paper folded once. She opened it carefully. Mr. President, this is the White House's own press release from December 2019 about Ivanka's Workforce Development Initiative. It announced a goal of creating 500,000 new training positions in partnership with private companies. The Government Accountability Office reviewed the program in 2021. They found that fewer than 50,000 positions were actually created, and of those, only 18,000 were new positions. The rest were rebranded existing programs. That's a 96% shortfall from the stated goal. Is a 96% failure rate what you consider very effective? The audience had gone quiet. Trump's face was beginning to redden. Those numbers are wrong. Totally wrong. The GAO is part of the deep state. They manipulate numbers to make us look bad. We created millions of jobs. I'm asking about the specific program Ivanka directed, Rebecca said, still in that same measured tone. Not the overall economy. The initiative she personally ran. The GAO report is public record. Are you saying the numbers are fabricated? Trump jabbed his finger toward her. I'm saying that you're taking numbers out of context, just like the fake news does. Ivanka worked very hard on many programs, and they were all very successful. The most successful programs ever, probably. Rebecca did not sit down. Mr. President, I'm going to share something personal now because I think it's relevant to why this question matters to me. My daughter's name is Daniela. She's 14 years old. She's exceptionally bright, gifted program, straight A's, remarkable talent in mathematics and science. Last year, she won a statewide science competition. She wants to be an engineer. Trump's expression shifted slightly, uncertain where this was going. Rebecca continued, I tell her constantly that success comes from hard work, from merit, from earning opportunities through demonstrated competence. I tell her that in America, if you work hard and prove yourself, doors will open based on what you accomplish, not who you know. And then I watch you appoint your daughter, who had never worked in government, never developed policy, never earned a security clearance through standard vetting, to one of the most powerful positions in the White House. And I have to explain to my 14-year-old daughter why the president's daughter gets to skip every qualification, every standard, every merit-based requirement that would apply to anyone else. The auditorium was completely silent now. The cameras had found Rebecca's face, and the split screen showed Trump's expression hardening. Your daughter is very lucky to have you, Trump said, his voice stiff. But Ivanka earned her position through her business success. No, she didn't. Rebecca's voice was quiet, but it cut through. She inherited her position in your company. She inherited her stake in your properties. She inherited her brand licensing deals because they carried your name. And then she inherited a White House position because she's your daughter. At no point in that chain did she earn anything through merit that was independent of being your child. Trump's face had moved from red to a deeper shade. That's a very nasty question. Very unfair. You don't know what you're talking about. Ivanka built her own. Mr. President, I've spent 6 weeks researching your daughter's career specifically for this moment. Rebecca pulled another paper from her blazer. The Ivanka Trump fashion brand launched in 2007 with $10 million in initial funding from the Trump Organization. The brand's first licensing deals came through your existing business relationships. When the brand failed and was shut down in 2018, the losses were absorbed by your company's structure. She didn't build something from nothing. She managed a brand extension of your empire, and when it failed, your company's resources cushioned the failure. She paused. That's not entrepreneurship, Mr. President. That's nepotism with a marketing budget. Trump stood from his bar stool. The movement was abrupt enough that the moderator visibly tensed. I don't have to stand here and listen to you attack my daughter. I'm not attacking her, Rebecca said, and for the first time there was something harder in her voice. I'm attacking you. I'm attacking your decision to tell the entire country that positions of power should be earned through merit and hard work, and then hand one of the most influential positions in government to your daughter based purely on biology. I'm attacking your hypocrisy. Because when I tell my daughter that success comes from merit and she sees your daughter succeed through family connection, you make me a liar. The silence that followed was absolute. Trump's mouth opened, closed. His hand made an aborted gesture toward Rebecca, then dropped. 7 seconds. 10. 12. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower, more controlled, but vibrating with barely suppressed anger. Ivanka is more qualified than most of the people who've ever worked in the White House. She's been successful her entire life. She's smart, she's capable, and she worked harder than anyone. Mr. President, Rebecca's interruption was gentle but firm. I'm going to tell you something else about my daughter. Last year, when she won that science competition, do you know what the prize was? A $5,000 scholarship and the opportunity to intern at a NASA research facility for one summer. She had to submit an application. She had to go through interviews. She had to compete against 300 other qualified students. She earned that opportunity through documented merit, a project that was reviewed blind by judges who didn't know her name, her background, or who her parents were. She took a breath. Your daughter walked into the West Wing because you're her father. My daughter had to prove herself to strangers to earn a summer internship. And you want to tell me they both succeeded through merit? Trump's jaw was clenched so tightly a muscle was visibly twitching near his ear. You're comparing apples and oranges. A high school science project is not the same as... You're right, Rebecca said. It's not the same. Because my daughter's achievement was measured, evaluated, and earned through a blind process. Your daughter's appointment was handed to her by a father who had the power to ignore every standard that would have disqualified anyone else. So when you talk about merit, when you talk about qualification, when you criticize DEI hiring or affirmative action or any program designed to give opportunities to people who don't have family connections, remember that you gave the biggest affirmative action appointment in modern government to your own daughter. Trump pointed at her, his voice rising. My daughter was more qualified than you'll ever be. Based on what measure? Rebecca's voice didn't rise to match his. What metric are you using? Because I can measure my daughter's qualifications. I have her grades, her test scores, her competition results, her peer reviews. Everything she's accomplished exists in documentation that any stranger could verify. What documentation exists for Ivanka? What blind evaluation? What competitive process did she go through where evaluators didn't know she was your daughter? She paused. There is none, because she never had to prove anything to anyone except you. And you're not an objective evaluator, Mr. President. You're her father. Trump's breathing was audible in his microphone now. His face had progressed through several color stages and settled on a mottled red-purple that suggested his blood pressure was approaching concerning levels. I appointed the best people. You appointed your daughter and your son-in-law, Rebecca interrupted. Two people with zero government experience, zero relevant credentials, and family relationships to you. That's not appointing the best people, Mr. President. That's monarchy. That's the kind of leadership where power transfers through bloodline rather than merit. And when you did that, when you put your family in positions of power they hadn't earned, you told every qualified professional in America that their years of education, their decades of experience, their documented expertise, all of it mattered less than being related to you. The moderator finally found his voice. Mr. President, would you like to respond? Trump turned to the moderator as if suddenly remembering he existed. This whole thing is a setup. This woman comes here with prepared attacks, prepared documents. She's obviously a plant from the Democrats, from the fake news, trying to make me look bad. I'm a registered Republican, Mr. President. Rebecca's voice was absolutely level. I voted for you in 2016. I believed you when you said you'd drain the swamp, when you said you'd end corruption, when you said you'd run government like a business based on merit and results. And then you appointed your daughter and your son-in-law. And you proved that everything you said about merit was a lie. Because when you had the power to choose, you chose family. Just like every corrupt leader you claimed you were different from. She pulled one final paper from her blazer. This is a list of the qualified candidates who were passed over for positions that went to Ivanka and Jared Kushner. People with PhDs in international relations, former ambassadors, career civil servants with decades of experience, private sector leaders with documented success in the exact areas they would have overseen. Every one of them more qualified by any objective measure, and every one of them rejected in favor of your children. Trump's hand was gripping the bar stool now. I had every right to choose my team. You had the power to choose, Rebecca said. But having power and having the right to use it are different things. You could appoint your daughter, but doing so revealed that every speech you'd ever given about merit was performance. Every criticism you'd made of unqualified people in government was projection. Because when it mattered, when you had the choice, you didn't choose merit. You chose nepotism. You chose exactly what you'd spent years attacking. She folded the papers and put them back in her blazer. I came here tonight because I need to look my daughter in the eye and tell her that I tried, that I stood up and I asked you directly to explain the gap between what you preach and what you practice. Because she's watching, Mr. President. She's watching at home right now. And if you can't explain how your daughter earned a West Wing office, then I need her to see that at least her mother demanded an answer, that at least someone asked the question. Rebecca sat down. The movement was quiet, final. She had said everything she came to say. Trump stood at his bar stool, visibly struggling to control his breathing. The audience was motionless. The moderator was looking at his notes as if hoping to find an escape route written there. 17 seconds passed, the longest silence of Donald Trump's entire public career. A man who had spent 5 decades filling every pause with words, who interrupted compulsively, who never let silence exist, he stood there and said nothing. Finally, in a voice that had lost all its practiced showmanship, next question. The moderator blinked. Mr. President, would you like to respond to... I said next question. The words came out harsh, clipped. We're done with this. Next question. The moderator gestured to another audience member. The town hall continued. Trump answered questions about the economy, about immigration, about foreign policy, but his voice had changed. The confidence was gone. He kept glancing toward the third row, toward Rebecca Torres, who sat with her hands folded in her lap, her expression calm. The town hall ended at 8:47 p.m. Trump left the stage immediately, bypassing the traditional audience handshake line. Rebecca remained in her seat, speaking quietly with the people around her until the auditorium began to empty. By 9:15 p.m., the clip was trending. By 10:30, it had 15 million views. The 17 seconds of silence, Trump's face frozen in an expression somewhere between rage and recognition, became the most shared political video of the month. But the moment that generated the deepest response wasn't the silence. It was Rebecca's question, delivered in that calm, measured voice. When I tell my daughter that success comes from merit and she sees your daughter succeed through family connection, you make me a liar. Because it was personal. It wasn't about policy or politics. It was about what parents tell their children about how the world works and what happens when the most powerful people in the country prove those lessons false. At 11:04 p.m., Trump posted on Truth Social, "Nasty woman at town hall tonight, obviously a plant, tried to attack my daughter who served her country beautifully." The American people see through these setups. The post received 340,000 replies in 6 hours. The most popular, with 892,000 likes, read, "A mother asking how you explain nepotism to her daughter isn't a plant. It's a citizen demanding accountability. The fact that you can't tell the difference explains everything." Rebecca Torres did not respond on social media. She gave a single interview to a local Florida news station the next morning. She said she'd gone to the town hall as a mother who was tired of explaining to her daughter why merit mattered everywhere except at the top. She said she'd done her research because if she was going to ask the question, she wanted to be able to back it up with facts. When asked if she was satisfied with Trump's response, she said simply, "He didn't respond." He said, "Next question." Now, that tells my daughter everything she needs to know about whether he can defend his choices. The interview clip was shared widely, but it was a single line from it that became the lasting quote. The reporter asked Rebecca what she hoped would come from her question. She thought for a moment, then said, "I hope my daughter watched that silence. I hope she saw that when you ask powerful people to justify their hypocrisy with facts instead of rhetoric, sometimes they can't. Sometimes they just say, 'Next question,' and move on because they know they can't defend what they did. And I hope she learns that asking the question anyway, even when you know they won't answer it well, is still worth doing, because the silence is the answer." 3 days after the town hall, Ivanka Trump posted a carefully worded statement on Instagram saying she was proud of her service and that she'd worked hard to earn the trust her father placed in her. The statement did not address the specifics Rebecca had raised. It did not explain the GAO report's findings. It did not provide metrics or documentation of success. It was, like so many statements before it, an assertion without evidence. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of comments asked the same questions Rebecca had asked. What qualifications? What competitive process? What documentation? The statement was eventually turned off to comments. Jasmine Crockett, who had watched the town hall from her office in Washington, sent a private message to her staff. "Find out who Rebecca Torres is. I want to send her a thank you note. She just did what we do every day. She asked for receipts and didn't accept confident assertions as a substitute for evidence. That's what citizenship looks like." The note arrived at Rebecca's home 4 days later. It read simply, "Thank you for doing your homework and asking the questions that needed to be asked. Your daughter is learning from the best teacher possible, Jasmine Crockett." Rebecca framed it and put it in her daughter's room, next to Daniela's science competition trophy and her NASA internship acceptance letter. All of them achievements earned through documented merit. All of them proof that when the process is fair, when evaluation is blind, when power can't override standards, talent finds its way. And when Daniela asked her mother why the congressman had sent a thank you note, Rebecca told her the truth, because sometimes the most important thing you can do is ask powerful people to explain themselves. And sometimes when they can't, their silence tells you more than any answer could have. The town hall question became a case study. Not in political ambush or partisan attack, but in what happens when ordinary citizens do the work to hold power accountable. Rebecca Torres spent 6 weeks reading GAO reports, reviewing White House personnel records, researching business histories. She came prepared. She asked specific questions. She brought documentation. She didn't yell. She didn't insult. She simply asked Trump to defend his choice using the same merit-based standards he claimed to value. And he couldn't do it. So he said, "Next question," and moved on. Because when you've spent a lifetime confusing power with merit, when someone asks you to separate the two, you have nothing to say. The only move left is to change the subject and hope everyone forgets the question was asked. But Rebecca Torres made sure her daughter wouldn't forget. She made sure Daniela understood that merit is measurable, that success earned through work looks different than success inherited through name, and that demanding evidence is not an attack, it's citizenship. And somewhere in homes across America, other mothers were having the same conversation with their daughters, showing them the clip. explaining the difference between what Trump claimed to value and what he actually chose, teaching them that when powerful people can't defend their hypocrisy, sometimes the best response is 17 seconds of silence followed by next question, because that silence said everything. And next question was admission that no answer existed that would survive scrutiny. Merit, it turned out, was exactly as measurable as Rebecca Torres had demonstrated. And when measured honestly, some people's achievements looked very different than they'd claimed.